Hey, what's up guys? So in this video we're going to be taking a look at the new TMG Alpha-15 laser jammer. This is the jammer that I know a lot of you guys have been pretty interested in. And the reason, it kind of comes down to two main things. Number one, it is an effective laser jammer. If it wasn't, who cares? And number two, it's also a relatively affordable laser jammer. So you can kind of think of it as a way to get an effective laser jammer, but spending less than the ALP. To give you an idea as far as pricing, a set of duals like this retails for $629. A set of quads for 4 heads retails for $899. Now to compare that to the ALP, for example, if we take a look at a set of duals, this again is $629. In ALP, it's going to start at $749 for a set of duals. However, this comes with a number of things standard that you have to pay extra for with the ALP. For example, if you want louder alerts or voice alerts, the ALP has a little buzzer, but if you want the louder alerts, you need the HiFi module. That's another $100. If you want Bluetooth built into the ALP to update it from your phone, that's another $100. Whereas this has both of those capabilities actually built in standard. There's a speaker here in the CPU, and there's Bluetooth built in as well to pair it with your phone. Now to get that with the ALP, it's another $200. So if we take a look feature-wise to get a more apples-to-apples comparison in terms of features, $629 here as opposed to $949 for the ALP. So we're looking at just over $300 less here for the TMG. Now, what if we take a look at a set of quads? If we go up to 4 heads, this again is going to retail for $899 for a set of quads. The ALP is going to be $1449, and then if we add in the HiFi and the Bluetooth module, that puts us at $1649. That's like $750 more, which is almost double the price of this guy here. Not quite, but we're getting close. Now, the individual heads are also less expensive here with the TMG. With the ALP, it's $250 per additional head. With the TMG, it's $169. Let's call it $170, and another $25 for the additional cable that you'll need. So as you can see, this is a way to save some cash, especially if you're going for a bunch of additional heads to, get front and rear coverage or for larger vehicles. This is a way to save some money over the ALP. But that said, is it a good thing to do? I mean, there's other jammers that are available that are less expensive than the ALP, but the ALP is still better, and so much so that it's still worth going for those. Whereas with this one, it may be a good option for some people, not for everybody, depending on your situation, where you drive and what type of vehicle you have. But for some people, this could be a really good way to save some cash. And so in this video, I want to talk more about the jammer. Let's go over, basic features, functionality, a little bit as far as how it compares to the competition and whatnot, and just kind of get more familiar with the jammer. Now, I also want to do a couple follow-up videos going into like more hands-on stuff as far as the different buttons and features and kind of interfacing with the system and how to use it in practice. I also want to cover things like installation in your vehicle, how many heads you need, how they should be installed and oriented, all that kind of stuff. And so I'm going to have a couple follow-up videos going into this in more detail, but in this one, let's do just kind of like a higher level overview as far as the TMGs themselves. For those of you guys who are not familiar with TMG, I wasn't. TMG, it stands for the Taiwan Microwave Group. TMG. This product, the Alpha-15s, they've actually been available for years in Taiwan. They've been sold there, and now they're actually bringing it here to the US. So there's American firmware, support for American guns. It's now available here in the American market. Now, TMG, the company themselves, it's not a new company. The founder of TMG, actually back in like the year 2000 or so, he was an engineer leader for this science and technical R&D institute in Taiwan. Now a lot of those guys have gone on to actually work for the Taiwanese military, and now they're actually moving over to doing civilian products as well. So a lot of the laser jamming capabilities here originated in the Taiwanese military, and now it's available here for civilian use. So that's pretty cool. And as I mentioned earlier, the company is new to the US, but the company itself is not new. And the product itself has been sold for years in Taiwan. So existing product, but new to the US and new American firmware. This has been in development for the past couple months, and it's been pretty impressive to watch them develop from where they started to where they are now, and what they're capable of doing as far as jamming some of the tougher guns. Now, taking a look at the system itself, this is the CPU. It's a little bit bigger than maybe like a deck of playing cards or so, and this is what you're going to have installed in your vehicle somewhere. On the top, we've got a number of different buttons for things like disabling the jammers when shot, or setting it to update mode so that you can pair it with your phone and update the firmware through your phone. There's a power button right here, which you can use to turn the system on and off. You've got your volume buttons right here. and then on the back you have the ports for plugging in different heads. There's support for 4 heads here, but there's also a splitter that's available if you want to do more than 4 heads, so that 2 heads can plug into one port for a total of up to 8 heads. On the front of the system right here, there's actually a set of arrows, and they'll light up front or rear depending on if you get shot in the front or in the rear. And so you've got the audio confirmation as well as the arrows to let you know visually. Now this system, it's going to work best if you install it somewhere in your car where you have physical access to it. And the reason I say that is things like if you need to see the arrows, which you probably don't in practice, you'll need to be able to, well, physically see this. Things like maybe disabling the jammers, you're going to have to press a button here to do it.
Receive only mode.
If you don't want to do that, and if you want to have this hidden somewhere in your car, you'll lose a couple of the features here, and some things will be compromised. Like there is an automatic JTK feature, for example, which was awesome, and I definitely want to highlight that, and props to TMG for building that in by default. The system will, when you're shot with laser, automatically disarm itself after 4 seconds, which is fantastic.
Front laser. Dragon Eye Compact. Auto sleep on.
If you don't know why that's important, click this button up here and watch why it's so critical to disable your jammers when shot, and that's definitely really important, so good job on them. Now, if you have the system like this, maybe hidden out of sight and tucked somewhere in your center console, you're not going to be able to press the button. However, the system can still disarm itself. If you'd like to manually JTK and manually disarm the buttons, but you can't hit the disarm button or the power button, you can just wire in your own kill switch, and any 12-volt installer can do it. It's just a switch you install somewhere in your car, and it will cut power to the system entirely. So that's kind of the workaround for that.
Front.
Some of the other things, there's things to consider, like how the speaker it's built into here, it may be kind of muffled depending on where you install it, so you'll want to make sure you've got the volume turned up nice and high. You're not going to have access to the volume once it's tucked up, so if you have this hidden somewhere, you do lose some of the functionality. But as far as the performance, yeah, the performance is going to be pretty good, which is going to be one of the biggest appeals of it, but there are kind of some trade-offs here. Now, moving on to the heads themselves are actually very similar in design and size to the competition. So if you're familiar with Escort, Blinder, Anti-Laser, they're all using the same style heads. There are a couple differences here. You'll find things like they use a metal casing here, and also this plastic cover, it's actually removable. You can pop it off, and the idea there is if this ever winds up getting scratched when you're driving around, you can actually pop this off and put another one on. I'm not totally convinced about the necessity of this. I haven't heard of any people having issues because of like damage to the heads or something. I had heard of one person who his parking sensor functionality for his parking sensors here didn't really work as well, but then when he swapped heads, that started to work better. Doesn't matter. But in terms of laser jamming capability, I've never seen it compromised due to these things being scratched or damaged. But it is cool that should anything happen, you can just swap out these whole things. Behind this plastic removable head, the whole thing is weather sealed, so you're not going to get any sort of water intrusion. Something else that you'll notice is we have like 3 kind of bubbles right here. The laser receiver, the detector essentially, is behind this bigger bubble, and you'll see 2 smaller ones here right next to it. When they were developing the system, they were trying different setups with 2 laser transmitters, which is why you see the 2 bubbles, versus 1 laser transmitter. So they were testing a number of different things, and they actually found, believe it or not, having just 1 transmitter actually works better than having 2 of them. And with the replaceable covers, they've got the bubbles here for the 2, but there's actually 1 transmitter behind there. So fun fact for you. Now next, let's go ahead and dive into the meat and potatoes, like one of the most important things to cover here, the jamming capabilities. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if it can't jam, who cares about the rest of it, you know? So let's go into that next. Now let's talk about what we should expect and what we're looking for. Ideally, under ideal circumstances, you're going to be able to drive past the cop and he will never be able to get your speed at any distance or any speed, right? Then you slow down, disable your jammers, and boom, he sees that you're doing the speed limit. Awesome. That's what you're going to want to do. Now this jammer, it's going to be not able to do that in every instance, and I think that's one of the biggest limitations. However, it's going to give you sufficient performance for most people that despite the inability to jam to gun against some of the tougher guns, it's still going to be fine for most people, and if you'd want to save some money, that's a way to do it. Now, as far as the ALP, if we start with that, that's kind of, well, it's pretty much the best laser jammer on the market. It's going to give you, with a good install, pretty much jam-to-gun performance in most instances. Sometimes there might be some close-range punch-throughs. You can do a little bit of tweaking with your system and whatnot. In some cars, you might have a punch-through around 100 feet or so, but in short, yeah, you're going to be able to get jam-to-gun performance almost consistently, which is great. No system is completely bulletproof and perfect, but that seems to give us the best protection that we've seen. Now, with this one, the protection is going to be not quite as good as with the ALP. It will be sufficient for most people people, and I want to go into that in a little bit more detail, but it's not quite as good, but it should still be good enough for a lot of people. Not everybody, but a lot of people. What do I mean by that? Well, if we take a look at how it handles some of the older, easier to jam guns, things like your PL3s, PL4s, ultralight guns, Laser Atlanta, True Speed S, things like that, it's going to be able to actually jam those guns, well, jam the gun, give you or the officer no ability to get your speed at any point, which is awesome. If we take a look at some of the tougher guns that have some anti-jamming capabilities, think like your Stalker XLR, your RLR, things like that, it's going to be able to jam those down to maybe 100 feet or so. So 100 feet, 150 feet, technically not jammed a gun, but in reality it should be just fine. By the time they go off, you should have time to slow down and you should be good to go. With the Dragoneye, things are a little bit different. You see the implementation that they've used here, their algorithm and the way they go about jamming the Dragoneye is different than what you'll have with other jammers such as the ALP, which actually gives the system some advantages and some disadvantages. With the ALP, the heads actually operate independently and do different things, whereas with this system, the heads actually all do the same thing. And one of the advantages of that would be to people who have, like, if you drive a motorcycle, with the ALP, because the heads are going to be doing different things, you're going to need at least 2 heads on a motorcycle to be able to jam it. For a traditional vehicle, you're going to want 3 heads to jam that gun. With this one, it's actually able to jam the Dragoneye with 1 head, but only on motorcycles. So if that applies to you, that could be another way that you could save some cash. This is able to do it with 1 head, which is pretty awesome. But for most of the rest of us who drive cars, trucks, SUVs, this is going to be not quite as effective as the ALP. And the biggest issue with it is that it is completely unable to jam the gun at close range inside of maybe 300 feet or so. What you're going to find is at long range, say, 1,500 feet away, it's going to be able to jam it no problem. However, once you start getting closer, you're going to start seeing punch-throughs in the range of maybe 200 to 500 feet, sometimes, rarely, but sometimes as far away as 700 to 800 feet. Now, if you add a 3rd head to the system here, that does help, but not in the same way that it does with the ALP. Because the heads are all doing the same thing, you don't need multiple heads doing different things. Adding additional heads here is primarily just for larger surface area and coverage on bigger vehicles. If you face the Dragoneye in a car, just like with the ALP, you're still going to want 3 heads though. Now, at the distances that it's able to jam, is that sufficient? Great question. Kind of depends on where you're driving. If you take a look at California, for example, they don't use the Dragoneye there, but as far as their typical engagement distances, you'll often find shots there around 1,000 feet to 1,500 feet away. If you look in other areas, such as in New York City, where they do use the Dragoneye, you'll find some curvy roads that limit the how far away they can shoot, and typical engagement distances there maybe about 300 feet or so. And so if you drive in New York City, this may not be the one to get. But if you drive in places where the shots are going to be farther away, this could be a good system to consider. So essentially, as you can see, for a lot of people, this can definitely do the job, but not for everybody, depending on if you need a really good Dragoneye capability. If you're in Edmonton and you see it all the time, might be a good idea to stick with ALPs, and if you're in close range areas with more difficult terrain, you might want to stick with something else. But for most people, and I mean the Dragoneye, it's only used in a couple states. I'll actually list them up on screen. For most people, the TMGs should actually be just fine. And so that's one of the reasons why I say it's not going to be, the best jammer for everybody, but for a lot of people, it's definitely going to be able to do the job at a lower price point. Now, something else briefly that I want to cover, and I'll go into more detail about this once we get into the installation and stuff. What about you guys who have BMWs, for example, with the grills where you may need to install these vertically? Well, luckily there's been some testing done with that. Again, a big thanks to the guys in New York for doing that testing. And what they were finding is if you have 3 heads, for example, and you orient them all vertically like this, if the shot is coming straight in, it's going to be able to jam. But as soon as you've got any sort of angle or curves in the road, or the officer standing on the side of the street, it's going to be almost instant punch through with vertical heads. However, if you take the center head and you mount it horizontally, but you have the outer 2 heads mounted vertically, the center head is able to compensate for that, and the results that you'll see there are going to be pretty much on par with what you'll see with 3 horizontal heads. So for those of you guys who want to install this somewhere where you have vertical grill slats, again, BMWs are the classic example, have the outer 2 heads mounted vertically and the center one mounted horizontally. Again, for some of these details about how to install the heads, how many and where they should go, I've got a follow-up video that you can watch, and I'll put the link in the video description, that covers, all the ins and outs that you need to know regarding the specifics on installation. Now, speaking of the center head mounted horizontally and whatnot, you know how the ALP has like the TX sensor in the middle, a special center head that you can use for adding, well, additional Dragon Eye capabilities? They're actually working on developing a new center head for the TMG as well, that should help actually address some of the close range punch through issues. Now, that's still in development. I have no idea when or even if it'll be available, and it still has to be tested and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, they're continuing to work on the system, and there's a lot of stuff that's still in development. I mean, even things like Bluetooth support. The app that they have for updating the system, it's actually not that great. It's very, very simple. It's designed just kind of for like the engineers to update it, but they're actually working on now some third-party apps that are going to be able to pair with the TMG and add some functionality. For example, for those of you guys who run the V1, and if you're looking for an integrated radar and laser package, if you have Android on your phone, you can run JBV1, and John Boy, the developer of JBV1, is working on TMG integration with his app. So you can have the TMG talking to your Android phone and paired with your V1 in that way. Now, this is just V1 specific, and if you don't have a V1, you're not going to be able to currently use their app. As far as I know, again, this is all subject to change. I think they're going to change that down the line, but right now, if you don't have the V1, that's not going to work. But the cool thing is, yes, there's some additional stuff, and I guess the main point that I wanted to make is there's some additional stuff that's currently in development above and beyond here. And so, yes, there is an app to update the jammers, and it also has cloud support, kind of like Waze, to where when you get shot with laser, these go off and report it to the cloud, and then can alert other users running the app. Of course, with Waze and Escort Live, there's a lot more users, so you've always got that to consider, but it's really cool to see that they're actually doing that sort of stuff here with the TMGs as well. So as you can see, there's a lot of cool stuff that's in development, and even where they are already, as far as their jamming capability, maybe not perfect, not ideal for everybody, but I think it's going to be a great option for a lot of people. Now, one of the things that I'm wondering about the most is, well, this is a new product, right? What about the long-term reliability, customer support, all that kind of stuff? Well, for TMG, I guess, for them, it's great to see that this product has been available for a while. It's not a brand new product. Yes, the firmware is new here in the States, and selling into the States, that is new too, but luckily the company's been out for a while, and the product itself has been out for a while as well, so that bodes well for the company. There's also a 2-year warranty on it as well, so that's good just to give us some additional protection. Additionally, the main person here who's helping bring this all out, Jag42 from the forums, a lot of you guys know him. He was actually one of the testers in the Texas countermeasure testing group, did a lot of radar detector testing. He's actually one of the main guys now helping bring this out to you guys. And so a big thanks to Jag42 for, well, bringing this to us and helping make this happen. Also, the old Sarge, thank you to you as well. So anyways, as you can see, the system looks pretty promising. There's still a lot to see as far as, the system it's now shipping. You can now go order it, and I'll have a link in the video description to where you can get it. So there's going to be a lot more information coming out, more testing being done now that this is available, and a lot of people, it sold out in like the first day, which is pretty cool to see. So I know there's more coming at the time that I'm shipping, or at the time that I'm shooting this video, but by the time you guys go to, you're watching this video, there should be more available. So that'll be good. But anyways, yeah, it looks like a pretty promising new system. Do I think it's better than the competition? Not necessarily. I have other jammers. I have no interest in replacing them with these, but if you were starting fresh, this is definitely something to give some strong consideration to. You'll save money over the competition. You're still going to have to install them just like you will with any other jammer. That install cost isn't going to change, or you do it yourself. There are some things that I wish was different, like with the, maybe I should do a whole nother video going about the ins and outs of the ALP, but the main stuff is I like some of the refinements. I like pro mode. I like the ability to, disable the jammers before I'm shot without relying on this. I can tuck the CPU somewhere away in my car, and then I've got a dedicated control pad, whereas with this one you don't have that. That has an external LED. This one does not. You're just reliant on the lights here. So that one kind of has more bells and whistles, but if you're looking for a simpler system and you're wanting to save some money and yet still get good jamming capabilities, and you're aware of maybe some of the limitations with some of the tougher guns, and you know that that doesn't necessarily apply to you and you should be fine with just this one, here you go. It's great to have another option that's available. And as I mentioned, yeah, they're now shipping, they're now available, and if you want one, go get one. If you want more information, I've got more videos coming as well. And depending on when you're watching this video, just take a look in the video description. They may even already be up online. So awesome. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions, I'm also going to link you down to RDF for the full discussion about the jammers, which is the best place to maybe go talk to other enthusiasts about it, see other people's installs, get more information, see test results, all that kind of stuff. That'll be linked down there as well. So awesome. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you guys have enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next video.